In this movie, I'll show you a few different ways to assign colors to paths inside Illustrator, both from the swatches panel as well as a few tricks that involve the eyedropper tool and drag and drop. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this series of circles that surrounds the god's head. And we're going to color every one of these 7 circles that is currently transparent, starting with the one with a purple stroke. So go ahead and click on its path outline. And you have to click on the outline because the path is unfilled. If you click inside of any of these circles, you'll select the first filled circle, which is this green circle near the outside. So I'll click on this guy. And because the fill is active, I can just go up here to the swatches panel and click on the desired color, which happens to be this one called imported beetle. So I'll go ahead and click it, and I was wrong. Look at that. The fill is not active, the stroke is active. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that modification, and I'll press the X key to ensure that now the fill is active, and I'll try again by clicking on imported beetle right there, and this time it works. Another way to work that provides you with less ambiguity is to select the desired path outline, which is the next circle up, and then go up to the control panel and click on the fill swatch. And that way you know, regardless of whether the fill or stroke is active, that you're going to assign the color to the fill. And then this time around, I'll select the next swatch in, which is called the rich dirt. And that goes ahead and assigns that fill to the artwork. Now I'll click the next circle out, and I'll go back up to the control panel, click on that fill swatch, and select the next swatch to the right, which is earth red. This ends up covering up the previous circle because apparently it's in back. Stacking order is always a big issue inside of Illustrator, so we'll address all the stacking problems in a later movie. Next, I want to select this circle here, and I want to assign the next swatch, which is called Stone Violet. And of course, I could do that just by clicking on the swatch, but then we wouldn't learn anything, would we? We'd just sit here and fill a bunch of circles, which gets boring after a while. So I want to show you a special eyedropper trick. I'll press the I key in order to switch to the eyedropper. And if you end up clicking inside of a shape, for example, let's say I click inside this green circle, then I'll transfer both its fill and its stroke attributes to the selected path outline. But that's not what I want. I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. I'm happy with a thick white stroke. What I want to do is fill the shape with that violet that is currently assigned to the stroke of the green circle. So if you want to lift one attribute and put it in another place, for example, I want to take the stroke attribute and assign it to the active attribute for the selected shape, which is the fill, then you press the Shift key and you click. Not on the fill, because if I did that, I'd just go ahead and lift the fill as you see right there. So I lift green and put it inside the fill. I'll go ahead and press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. Instead, I want to shift-click on the stroke, and that goes ahead and puts the stroke color inside the active attribute, which again is the fill. All right, another way to work, I'll press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac to deselect the artwork. Another way to work is to press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and that turns the eyedropper not into a kind of sucking eyedropper, but rather into a squirting one. And so let me show you what I mean there. I'll press the D key in order to establish the default attributes. And then I'll go up to the control panel, click on the fill icon right there, and change it to the next swatch, which is Faded Blanket. And now notice that I've got this brownish fill and a black stroke that's 1 point thick. If I press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click on that stroke, very important that you click on the outline and not inside the shape because it currently has no fill, and you'd end up affecting this green shape in the background. Go ahead and Alt-click or Option-click on the path outline, and you will assign that brown fill and that black stroke to that circle. All right, now let's take a look at drag and drop. Let's say I want to take native skin, which is the next swatch, and I want to assign it to the next circle out. I'd go ahead and drag that swatch and drop it again on the path outline, very important because the fill is non-existent. And as soon as you drop, then you will assign that swatch to the active attribute, which in our case is the fill. But let's say it wasn't. I'll go ahead and switch over to the color panel so we can see if I press the X key, I've now made the stroke active. Now I'll switch back to the swatches panel, and let's say I want to assign this guy, Imported Cocoa, to this final circle, the one that hasn't been colored so far. I'll go ahead and grab it and drag it and drop it onto the stroke because that's all I have to work with, and that changes the color of the stroke, not because I dropped it onto the stroke, but rather because the stroke is currently active. So I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. If you run into that scenario, but you still want to do a drag and drop, here's what you do. You go ahead and drag that color swatch, then you press the Shift key and drop it, and that'll go ahead and affect the inactive attribute. And those, my friends, are the various ways to apply color swatches to path outlines here inside Illustrator.